It's a feature Friday on KCMO. And it's always good to welcome in our friend Tony Botello of Tony's Kansas City on KCMO. What's happening, my man? How are you?
Good to be here, Pete. Thank you.
Are you a Jackson County resident?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I'm right in the thick of it, man.
So you're right in the thick of it. And that means you've been following very closely this drama with the Jackson County tax assessment issues, where last week the State Tax Commission said, hey, listen, Jackson County, you got to roll back those assessments to only a 15% increase. And Frank White is not wanting to play ball. Sorry for the cliche. What do you make of it?
Well, this was the week of dueling press conferences. So yes. Frank had his big one and called it unconstitutional. And again, I mean, this is something that I'm starting to hate, is, you know, kind of on the lower rung of local media, is, you know, they come out and make these big pronouncements. Oh, it's unconstitutional. Well, tell me how. Like, tell me exactly how it's unconstitutional. And you don't get much there. Then the legislators had their dueling conferences where pretty much most of them are lined up against him, with a notable exception of Jeannie Lauer, the chair of the legislature, who's kind of siding with Frank, doesn't want to make a ruling as of yet. And then on my blog, we had our friend Preston Smith weighing in like, hey, you know, she's not a Republican. And I will tell you what's going to happen, and I'll try to be as quick about this as possible. There's going to be an ordinance that comes forward where most of the legislature is going to say, hey, and do what Sean Smith has already done, and say, hey, cooperate with the commission. And so they're going to put that ordinance forth. And I just don't imagine Jeannie Lauer. I don't imagine Megan Marshall. I don't imagine anyone in Kansas City saying, oh, no, you know that tax rollback? No, don't do a tax rollback. How do you have a political career after that?
That's a good point. How Frank White has a political career right now is still a mystery to me as well. But, hey, here we are, right? I mean, he's been able to pull it off amazingly. I have never seen such an aloof reaction to one's own constituents potentially losing their homes like Frank White over the last several months.
Yeah, no, that's exactly true. I think it's a test of wills. I think there's a lot of I don't know. It's the same kind of quandary we got into with the stadium issue. It seems to be something like, no, he's personally invested in just winning. And I think, you know, when we talk about
but what is he winning? I mean, what is he winning? This is the worst political maneuvering I've ever seen in my years doing this, Frank White.
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to his decision-making. I mean, when you talk about the Tyler Technologies decision, we talk about keeping the assessor. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the tax commission weighing in with a regulatory agency saying, hey, no, we need to roll these things back. That really does, in my mind, have a final authority on, no, this is the decision, like your decision-making was wrong. But now, of course, we have to fight it out in court.
Exactly right. Tony Botello is here on KCMO Talk Radio. Now, you mentioned the stadium there. And listen, you now look at this site they're looking at, Washington Square Park, right next to Union Station, Crown Center. You buying that site?
Interesting angle for me. My 81-year-old Beatrice, my Aunt Teresa, we have in our family a couple of her uncles who have passed away. Some of them were in the Korean War. And, okay, so you had these businesses who basically shut down the first stadium idea. She donated a couple $100 to get you. They have little bricks where you can donate. And so it's right on top of a Korean War memorial. You want to make somebody exceptionally mad. It's families of Korean War vets. Because, I mean, they have a big deal of being like the forgotten war anyway.
Yes.
And so, and this morning the Star came out and said the thing that was in the comments everywhere on social media. It's a 20-year-old idea. I mean, it's a dumb idea that we've seen already. And 20 years ago, Crown Center was in a better place. I mean, let's look at it objectively. There was a mass shootout a couple blocks away from that same site earlier this year. Mm-hmm. So, no, I mean, we've seen this idea before. For me, in my mind, with the war memorial there and a fight, you know, tons of people getting press coverage for that, and the current state of Crown Center, I don't see it flying. I mean, do you?
Well, I think it works better than the Crossroads.
Right.
That's for damn sure. You know, I mean, at least it's something still in the downtown area.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, I say this as somebody whose grandfather served in Korea as well, as you had family that did too. Can you move the memorial? Can you move the bricks? I mean, it's not like there's bodies buried there. It's a memorial.
You might be able to, but you will have at least a few, at least a half dozen. You know Korean War veterans, and they're very antsy. I won't go into the long thing, but there's this great Walter Matthau bit where he's like, "Yeah, I was in the big one." And he was like, "It was a phone, the Bob Newhart phone thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the big one. No, Korea." And then it was big to me. And so, so those people are very, very adamant about their tribute. It's just down there. I just don't see it as a practical site. And then, you'll disturb all the homeless people sleeping there.
Well, that part is true. I still think Clay County makes a lot of sense, but for some reason, Clay County can't get itself at the top of the list, and I don't know why.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's one thing after the other with Clay County. And gosh, we've... I think that conversation makes more. Sean Smith came out and said he just doesn't know if there's the space there. And I don't know if there's...
Washington Square Park?
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, Clay County's got the best layout for this whole deal.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to Washington Square Park, all those other things, the hotels, the commercial real estate, the restaurants, a lot of that's there, and there's not going to be room to build that for the Royals to create this ancillary income stream. So I don't get it, because all you could fit there is a stadium and not much else, as far as I can tell.
Well, yeah, and we're back in the same square one that killed the Crossroads. Is people wondering, okay, where are we going to park?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have 25,000, at minimum 25,000 cars down there, and no real plan to park people anywhere. And that's part of what, there's a contingent, somebody on my blog said it, is there is just a contingent of voters who voted against the project just because they really weren't clear on what they were going to do to downtown. And this is the same idea, basically.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way. Tony, what about another sports team in town, the Current? You had something on your blog this week that didn't really get picked up, and I admit I missed it as well. What is it?
Okay, Wednesday, big game, international game. I couldn't tell you the team. I have to be honest. I couldn't tell you the opposition, but it was an international. It was for the in the Women's Cup tournament.
So this is for the Kansas City Current.
That's right.
Okay.
And they were playing an international game. I think a South African team. A couple. I follow a couple high profile feeds. I saw just the stadium. They, everybody had a good time. Mm-hmm. And this is the same. Nobody in the stands, basically. Like we're talking at least close to half empty, if not at least a fourth empty.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
That's not ideal.
No, it's not ideal, and it's the same problem that women's professional soccer has run into. Olympic soccer is a different story because there's only a series of games.
Yeah.
And so that's always had these huge, amazing turnouts that encourages people because you can take your daughter to a series of games. Season ticket holders, as you and I both well know, those are different birds. Mm-hmm. Those are people who are willing to lose toes for the team.
Yes.
They're willing to risk skin cancer out at the ballpark all summer. Be like, it's worth it. I'll sit out in right field and maybe, whatever happens, happens.
Yes.
Yes. So those aren't, that's not the take your daughter, because I want to encourage my daughter to be the best she can be, which is great. You only do that for about 5 games and you're out.
Yeah, well, listen, I got 3 daughters. I want to take them down there, but all I keep hearing about is, the mess of trying to get there and having to pay $55 on a gravel lot is really not my idea of taking my daughter to a professional women's soccer game at that kind of a price point just to get into the stadium. That's without tickets and food and anything else.
Or, Pete Mundo and the Mundo gang hopping aboard the streetcar and doing a 2.5-mile ride from a downtown parking lot.
Well, then I need an Uber from the streetcar stop in River Market.
Right.
I'm not walking 1.5 miles with a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. I got to carry both of them after, quarter of a mile.
Yeah, those are very, very practical concerns. So far, they haven't solved them. And a preview is there's the same old fight with the parking guy. His name is Chavez. I just want to get this out of the air. He's not Hispanic. His family.
Wait. What do you mean that there's a fight with the actual guy who guards the lot?
No, the parking guy who does he's the parking mogul. If you're down with the activist set, he's like the root of all evil.
What's this guy's name?
I think his name is Rick Chavez. He owns a whole ton of parking. It's a parking garage family.
Richard. Yeah. I saw him last night at the Lowe's Hotel. Actually.
Nice.
I didn't realize that's who you were talking about. So what about him?
Well, it's one of the proposals to solve this parking problem in 2 years from now is his parking lot company, and it always gets pitched to me as a personal peeve. It's Friday, as like he's Hispanic. No, he's Spanish, not Hispanic. It's fine. It doesn't matter. I don't think you need to be. I hope it's not a DEI gig to build parking lots. I hope we haven't fallen that far.
Well, my last name is Spanish, even though I'm not Spanish.
My tia Teresa always go, you're going on Pete Mundo.
So, I've thought about playing the Hispanic card, but it's really just, half Italian, half Irish. No one's going to look at me and think I'm Hispanic, but I could get away with it with the last name.
True. But they've amended that. Again, I could go off on this. They amended. George Zimmerman ruined it for me. They invented white Hispanic. So all of a sudden, my brother and my sister are.
What the hell's white Hispanic?
It is George Zimmerman.
What does that mean, though?
It just means that you aren't what some people. It's kind of racist.
Well, it's completely racist. That's like saying you're white black if you're only half black.
Well, and
is Patrick Mahomes white black?
Or was Charlize Theron? Is she African American?
Great question.
So. It's that kind of ridiculousness when you really get down into that conversation that emerges, and that is something from the early part of our current protest era.
Here's how it goes: if you have a D next to your name, you can be whatever you want to be. But if you might have an R next to your name or don't have a D next to your name, then you are white, fill in the blank, whatever you are. You're white Hispanic, you're white black, you're white this, you're white that. That's how it goes. Tony's Kansas City. Tony Botello is here on a Feature Friday on 95.7 FM KCMO. We are streaming on KCMOTalkRadio.com. All right, Waldo Brookside, Tony, had a big meeting this week with the police chief, with the prosecutor, about rising crime in these neighborhoods. What did you hear about it, and what's going on there?
Well, the big deal for me, I think Martin City Press also picked this up. 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Usually, you don't get many people.
Yep.
Packed house. Just huge. More, going back to the early part of our conversation, way more attendance-wise per capita, way more packed than the soccer game. And so just a ton of people really concerned. And, we've talked, it's become a political football. Earlier in this year, we talked about that chicken biz, just like, okay, so I'm making money hand over fist in Joco, but I can't keep my store open in Waldo.
Yeah.
And it's just getting robbed day after day, so I'm going to shut down. And he was like, oh, no, that's just political. He just got really slammed on social media because of it, pointing out a very obvious fact that these neighbors can attest to, that property crime. And I think, as people, as pundits and politicos, and you tend to downplay property crime, but after a while, it makes a difference. You have people. This morning, KCTV5 just came out of the story. Somebody getting shot because they hey, somebody's robbing my car. Let me go check it out. And the getaway car opens fire on it. So property crime is something we tend to look over because nobody's hurt, and it's just stuff. But it makes a difference after a while.
Yeah, are people getting murdered in Waldo and Brookside? No, but you're right. You've got people who own their homes, who own homes that are worth a lot of money in some cases, and they're not absolved from having the car broken into, having to fix windows, and frankly, not feeling safe in, pretty darn nice neighborhoods here in Kansas City, and it's problematic.
Yeah, especially when you go into Brookside. And it's basically, it becomes a policy issue when you have, the ideology of not all, but some of our elected leaders is that, no, we don't want to put people in jail. We don't want to put them into the system over property crimes. And that doesn't really help you out if, you're having to pay out of pocket $200 for a smashed window every couple of months.
Yeah.
And for some of these households, especially when you get into the some parts of Waldo, some parts of Brookside, is they're getting their windows smashed, every 3 months.
And I wonder if, and it probably wasn't, but man, Gene Peters Baker, the Jackson County prosecutor who's overseen this debacle the last few years, who has been very much a woke, soft on crime prosecutor, especially after George Floyd, I wonder if any of this is connecting for her at all.
I hope. I can only hope so, and more so. I just hope that all of the new prosecutor candidates, both the Republican now and the Democrat, have promised to do more. And so I hope that this kind of thing, these huge public meetings, property owners, stakeholders, just saying, please, we're not racist. Waldo and Brookside, those are progressive enclaves.
Yeah.
And so they don't want to. It's not wanting to crack down. It's not racially motivated. They're just like, hey, we have this problem that's taking place over years. We want somebody to do something about it.
Well, I wonder too, not just Gene, but the voters. Like you said, these are pretty progressive parts of Kansas City, and it's like, guys, have you opened up your eyes to what the hell's going on here?
Right.
Over the last few years? I mean, we've had this movement on cops aren't good, we need less cops, defund the police, the real victims are the criminals, they didn't have the right upbringing, so let's just, slap them on the wrist. And when there's no consequences, guess what? You're getting smash and grabs every 3 months in your neighborhood.
It does come down to local policy in the sense of there's no will in this town, not among our politicians, to build a jail. And maybe somebody gets caught. Maybe they don't get prosecuted. Maybe they don't get thrown the book at, but maybe they spend just a few hours in jail and have time to think about, about the direction they're headed in. Mm-hmm. And there's nowhere Kansas City is working without a jail plan going forward. Even in Platte County, they don't want to build a jail. Jails aren't very popular for voters, and it's hard to kind of tell people. That's why I'm glad we talk about it, is to connect the dots. It's like, you don't vote for a jail, there's no place to put these people who are breaking into your car.
Exactly right. Tony Botello's here. Now, it is election season, still election season. Yesterday in Sedalia down at the State Fair, you had Josh Hawley and Lucas Kunce. I mean, it was like a couple of boxers going nose to nose with each other. It got a lot of attention between the sitting U.S. Senator in Missouri and, of course, his Democratic counterpart, Lucas Kunce. What'd you make of that whole scene down there?
Best movie, we were talking about memes during the break, and the best one I saw was show the two of them together, face to face, really going at it. Josh Hawley was wearing his very, very nicely fitted plaid. It was still plaid, so you got to give him credit for that. Plaid designed shirt. And, of course, to be fair, it was a progressive person, and they were just like, oh, just kiss already.
I didn't see that one. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. So I don't know. I go to their just, these are two guys and, they need those working class votes. And,
yes.
And politics is image. It is perception. And the perception I could get away with because I've cut my own hair. Hey, personal aside, I cut my own hair.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Well, that's why you always have a hat on. I can't even judge the hair. Take that hat off for a second.
No, that's why. That's why, because I
want to see how good of a job you do. Can you take the hat off?
I do a horrible job. No, I'm going gray anyway.
Dude, I'm going gray too, and I'm 10 years younger than you, so it's okay.
So
that looks all right.
Yeah,
you look all right.
It's
good.
Yeah, no, it's fine, but I just can't from a dude who cuts his own hair out of laziness, convenience, and the last concern is cost. Haircuts are pretty cheap.
Yeah.
Those guys have awesome hair. Awesome hair. Beautiful. This is pricey for me again. More self-revealing. That's a $30 haircut.
Well,
those are fine. That there was a layering and stuff.
Yeah,
I have a cousin who's a stylist.
Yeah,
and so I can spot a decent haircut.
You really cut your own hair?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
No, once you do it, and then if you wear a baseball cap all the time, who cares?
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. Now Mark's thinking about cutting his own hair in there. I can see it. He's. Mark, you wear the hat all the time, too. So, you could break out cutting your own hair, probably.
I could.
Would your wife like that?
She actually cuts it, so.
Oh, she cuts your hair? Wow.
So
I'm learning more about everyone every day here on this show.
That's the way to do it.
That's the way to do it. Okay.
Cheaper.
All right. Well, definitely cheaper. I'm not denying you guys got us on cost there. Meantime, John and I are getting, our hair styled. And if you got John's hair at, 60-something years old, you got to keep that thing looking good. I mean, John's got the best hair in Kansas City.
I'm a hair farmer.
I know. You are. Oh, man. Well, Tony, I got 30 seconds. What should we keep an eye on here going forward in Kansas City?
Keep an eye on where Jackson County is going to go, the discussion, the decisions from the legislature.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, man, we appreciate the time.
Thank you, Pete.